If you thought you knew the full story, you don't. Because tonight's breakdown goes deeper than rumors, deeper than street whispers, deeper than anything fans ever imagined. This is the side of King Von nobody got to see, the side he left behind in the form of late-night messages, cryptic notes, and voice memos that sounded less like music and more like warnings. Fans are shocked, O'Block is buzzing, and even people close to him are asking the same question. What did Von know? And why was he trying to say it before he was gone? Before tragedy struck, before the headlines, before the chaos, he was sending signals. Messages to friends. Messages to family. Messages he never explained. And if you were in his position, same pressure, same heat, same enemies watching, what would you do? Would you speak up? Or would you stay silent? Because the internet couldn't believe it. And you won't either. Screenshots are circulating. Old conversations resurfaced. People he trusted are suddenly telling stories that hit different. And every clue points to one thing. King Von had a final warning, and nobody realized what it meant until it was too late. Let's get into it, because this story, it changes everything. Von always lived like every day was part of a bigger story he never had time to finish. The streets knew him, fans adored him, haters studied him, but hardly anyone ever understood the way his mind worked. He wasn't loud, he wasn't careless, and he wasn't the type of rapper who posted everything for attention. If anything, he was quiet in the moments where the loudest men usually broke. And that's why the messages he left behind hit different, because people never expected Von to speak the way he did, especially not in his final days before everything changed. It all started with a late-night studio session, the kind where the booth light glows red and the world outside feels like it's on mute. Von was sitting on the broken leather couch, hoodie up, headphones half on, scrolling through his phone like he was searching for something he couldn't describe. His engineer, Mello, kept glancing at him between takes. "You good?" he finally asked. Von didn't look up. "Yeah," he said softly. "Just thinking." That was the first red flag. Von never just thought. He always knew exactly what mood he was in. But something was eating him alive, something that didn't sit right with him, and Mello could feel the tension every time Von's phone lit up the room for half a second before he flipped it face down. Hours later, Von stepped outside the studio for air. That's when he pulled out his phone and began typing what would become one of his final messages to a close friend. "If anything happened to me, just know I seen it coming." Fans didn't know about this message yet. It wasn't trending. It wasn't leaked at the time. It was buried deep in a private chat that only one person had access to, a friend named Dre, someone who grew up with Von before the music checks, before the fame, before the fake love. Dre read the message twice, confused. He replied, "Bro, what you talking about? Who?" Von left him on read. Inside the studio, Mello noticed the shift. Von wasn't recording like himself. His flow was sharp, but his mind wasn't there. He kept looking toward the door, like he expected someone to walk in. At one point he even asked Mello to lock the studio from the inside, something he never did. Mello thought it was just paranoia. But Von wasn't paranoid. He was aware. Later that night, Von received another message, a voice note. The person's name wasn't saved. The voice said, "You moving too confident. Chill out." Von replayed it 3 times, jaw tight. Mello could hear the muffled audio and asked, "Who that?" Von shook his head. "Nobody." But it wasn't nobody. Von had been dealing with tension behind the scenes for months. Arguments that started small, disagreements that turned heated, jealousy that turned into full bitterness. Being a rising rapper meant someone always wanted something from him. Money, respect, revenge, acknowledgement, a favor, a cosign, or sometimes just a reason to be petty. But what bothered Von wasn't the haters, it was the people who acted like they loved him. One person in particular had been drifting in and out of his life in ways he couldn't understand. A friend turned enemy turned friend again. Someone who knew things about Von he never shared publicly. Someone who had the potential to hurt him if they wanted to. They started arguments. They made threats. They tried reconnecting. And every time Von ignored them, they showed up again, this time with a smile that didn't match their intentions. Von didn't name this person in any message, but he hinted at them. Another message he sent said, "Everybody ain't who they say they is." Fans would have shrugged that off if they saw it back then. But knowing what happened later, the message feels like a warning Vaughn didn't know how to articulate fully. That week, Vaughn's sister even noticed the change. She walked into his apartment and said, "You look tired." Vaughn shrugged it off. "I'm good." But she said his energy felt different. He was checking the windows more. He was scrolling his phone aggressively. He was listening to old voice notes like he was trying to decode something. She asked him if he was in drama again. He said, "It's not drama. It's people." Meanwhile, fans online were clueless. Vaughn was posting snippets, funny videos, studio clips. Nobody saw the heaviness behind it. Nobody read the messages he wasn't posting. The few tweets he wrote sounded casual, but hidden in between were emotional lines that fans dismissed as Vaughn being Vaughn. One said, "People switch up fast." Another said, "Watch who you trust." Another said, "Love ain't real outside the trenches." But there was one message fans ignored entirely, a now-deleted tweet at 3:41 a.m. that read, "I know too much." He deleted it within minutes. Screenshots were rare. Only a handful of old accounts caught it before it vanished. Now, those few screenshots circulate like urban legends. But the real twist came 2 days before the tragedy. Vaughn went to a small gathering, not a party, not a club, just a living room chill session with people he thought were neutral. One of them, a guy named Rico, later told a blogger something strange. Vaughn kept pacing, walking from window to window, glancing outside like he expected someone to pull up. When Rico asked him if he wanted security nearby, Vaughn said, "Nah, they not coming like that. It's deeper." That line haunted Rico later. At that gathering, Vaughn stepped into the kitchen and recorded a voice memo meant for himself. The voice memo wasn't a verse, not a freestyle, not a joke. It was raw, quiet, heavy. He said, "They think I don't see it, but I do." Nobody knew what it was. Another message Vaughn wrote that night was even darker. He texted his cousin, "If I leave, take care of mama." His cousin asked where he was going. Vaughn replied, "Ain't decided yet." Again, left on read. The tension kept building. The final straw was a confrontation that happened the day before everything spiraled. Vaughn met someone at a gas station, a guy his friend said he used to be cool with before fame. The guy approached him aggressively. Words were exchanged. People recording from cars caught bits of it. "You're acting funny now. You're moving weird. You're different since you got money. You forgot who you were." Vaughn didn't argue. He kept repeating, "Ain't nobody forget nothing. Just stay in your lane." But the guy's last line stuck with Vaughn, "Just remember, everybody gotta pay up someday." Vaughn never repeated that line to anyone, but he recorded it in a note on his phone. Hours later, he sent his final message to Dre, "I'ma explain everything soon. If I don't, you already know." That message hits different now. The moment Vaughn sent that final message, "If I don't, you already know," everything around him began moving faster than he could keep up with. The streets started shifting, energy changed, and even people who had never paid attention to him suddenly became more curious, more watchful, more present in places they normally avoided. Something about Vaughn's silence after that message felt wrong, even to people who barely spoke to him. Dre tried calling. No response. His sister texted him twice. No reply. Even Mello, who barely ever got emotional, said, "Bro ain't text me back. It's something off." Meanwhile, Vaughn was dealing with the kind of pressure that doesn't come from enemies. It comes from people who were once close enough to hug you. The real conflict didn't start with outsiders. It started when someone he trusted crossed a line Vaughn didn't think could be crossed. And that betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. It didn't come with yelling or threats. It came disguised as concern. 2 days before everything unfolded, Vaughn met up with an old friend from his block, a guy named Tino, someone who always floated between being a supporter and being unpredictable. Vaughn sat with him in a parked car behind a liquor store, the windows fogging from the cold night. Tino kept saying, "You know I always looked out for you." But folks talking. Vaughn stared straight ahead. "Talking about what?" he asked. Tino hesitated. Then he said the line that shifted Vaughn's whole mood. "They are saying you are switching up. That you are feeding the wrong people. That you got comfortable." Vaughn didn't say anything at first. He just leaned back in his seat, staring at Tino like he was trying to read between his words. Finally he said, "Who is they, bro?" Tino shrugged. "People who know you. People who used to love you. People who think you forgot where you came from." Vaughn almost laughed. "You repeat rumors like they Bible." But Tino wasn't smiling. "I'm telling you before it get ugly." That conversation rattled Vaughn more than he admitted. Because the last thing you want to hear, when you're already on edge, is that people who knew your first pair of shoes are now plotting against your last breath. Later that night, Vaughn got another message. This one harsher, colder, and painfully direct. A screenshot from an unknown number showed a conversation where someone said, "He think he is unstoppable. Time to show him he is not." Vaughn stared at the message for a long time. He didn't reply. He didn't forward it. He didn't screenshot it. He just locked his phone and breathed slowly, like he was trying to calm a storm inside his chest. By morning, Vaughn showed up at his cousin's house, the place he always went when his mind was heavy, but his pride wouldn't let him say so. His cousin opened the door, confused. "You good?" Vaughn nodded and walked in quietly. They sat in the living room, old TV flickering, microwave buzzing in the background. His cousin asked again, "Something wrong?" Vaughn shrugged. "Just tired." But his cousin knew that wasn't the truth. "Are you tired or scared?" Vaughn looked up sharply. "Ain't nobody scared." But his cousin shot back, "Then why do your eyes look like you ain't slept in a week?" Vaughn didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through old notes. Things he wrote months ago that didn't make sense back then, but suddenly felt like pieces to a puzzle he wasn't ready to finish. One note said, "Never let a snake see you blink." Another said, "You know who real by how they move when nobody is watching." The last one said, "If I disappear, check who stopped asking questions." His cousin grabbed the phone. "Yo, what is all this?" Vaughn snatched it back tight. "Nothing. Just bars." But his cousin wasn't convinced. "Vaughn, don't lie to me." Vaughn didn't look up. "I'm not lying. I'm just not explaining." Friends started noticing the shift too. Dre called Mello and said, "He's acting weird." Mello responded, he was scared of something he was not saying. Dre said his gut was telling him something bad was coming. Mello told him not to overthink it, but even he didn't believe his own advice. That evening, Vaughn went to a quiet rooftop spot he used to chill at back when life was simple. He sat down overlooking the city, neon lights reflecting off his face. He pulled out his phone and recorded a voice memo, one meant only for himself. In the memo, he admitted something he never said out loud: "People want me gone. And the crazy part is, they don't even know why." His voice cracked a little. Not fear. Not sadness. Frustration. It be your own. He ended the memo with a sigh and stood up, staring into the night like he was searching for answers in the skyline. But he wasn't alone on that rooftop. A neighbor later claimed she saw a figure standing far behind Vaughn, leaning on the doorway, watching him. She said she didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe a friend. Maybe a bodyguard. But the more she replayed it in her head, the more she realized the body language didn't look friendly. She said the person stood too still, too quiet, too intentional. Like they were waiting for the right moment, she said. Vaughn left the rooftop at 11:52 p.m. By midnight, he received another message from the unknown number, "Don't run." He didn't reply. The next day, Vaughn met Dre in person. Dre was furious. "Why are you saying all that scary stuff?" Vaughn shrugged. "Because I ain't stupid." Dre tried calming him down. "Nobody is coming for you, bro. You are reading too deep." But Vaughn shook his head. "I know energy. And this energy ain't normal." Dre asked him to lay low for a few days. Vaughn agreed, or at least he pretended to. But instead of going home, he drove to a quiet location outside the city. He sat in the car, engine running, staring at a message he hadn't opened yet. When he finally did, the message read, "We are not done." Vaughn whispered to himself, "Who is we?" He didn't get an answer. That night, Vaughn recorded one last voice note, softer, slower, heavier than anything he ever said before. "If I don't make it back, just know they was close." Everything after that happened fast. Too fast. Because everything after that happened so fast, even the people closest to Vaughn still struggled to piece it together. The last 24 hours of his life didn't move like normal days. They moved like scenes from a movie that nobody wanted to watch. Vaughn's energy shifted. His movements changed. Even his voice sounded different, like every sentence carried a finality he wasn't ready to accept but had already made peace with internally. The morning after he recorded that final voice note, Vaughn drove around the city with no real destination. He kept turning off his music, switching radio stations, checking his mirrors like he was expecting a car to follow him. He stopped twice for gas, but didn't buy anything. He checked his phone constantly, not for messages, but to reread the ones he already received. Dre called him again. Vaughn let it ring. Mello texted him, "Where you at?" Vaughn didn't respond. His sister sent him a voice note saying, "Come home. Mama wanna see you." Vaughn opened it, then closed it without replying. People who later reviewed security footage from that day, the fictional version described here, said Vaughn looked like a man walking with purpose, but without comfort. Like someone who knew something major was coming, but didn't know when or how. At a red light, he stared out the window at a group of kids walking home from school. He whispered to himself, "I used to be like that, before things got complicated." Then he drove off. Around 5 p.m., Vaughn pulled up to an old basketball court where he used to hoop before fame. The chain nets were rusted, the court cracked, graffiti sprayed across the walls, but it was still home to him. He sat on the bench and scrolled through his phone. There was one message he had been avoiding for days, a long paragraph from someone he once trusted deeply, someone who switched sides when the money started coming in. He finally opened it. The message said, "Let's meet. We can fix this." Vaughn shook his head. Ain't nothing to fix. But a part of him, the part that still wanted closure, clicked the call button anyway. The call didn't go through. Straight to voicemail. Vaughn stared at the screen, confused. He called again. Same thing. He texted, "Where you at?" Delivered. Not read. He pocketed his phone and walked across the court, pacing in straight lines like he was thinking through every possibility. A neighbor noticed him from her window and later said he looked like a man carrying memories he never shared. At one point, Vaughn sat down on the curb, head in his hands, breathing slowly. Then his phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown number, "Last chance." Vaughn's jaw clenched. His fingers tightened around his phone. But he didn't reply. He stood up, walked to his car, and drove off, heading straight toward a part of the city he rarely visited anymore because of old issues, old faces, old wounds. Street lights flickered as he drove under them. Cars honked, dogs barked, people yelled across the block. But Vaughn didn't hear any of it. His world was quiet. The kind of quiet that happens before a storm. He pulled into a hidden alley behind a convenience store. This was a place he used to hang out at when his life was simpler, when the only problems he had were getting home before curfew. He turned off the engine and sat in silence. His phone buzzed again. Another message, "If you show up, come alone." Vaughn whispered, "I've been alone." Then he got out of the car. He started walking, hands in his pockets, head low, scanning the area. The street was too still, the air too cold, the wind too quiet. Every instinct in his body screamed that this was a mistake. But Vaughn wasn't the type to run from closure. He wasn't scared of people, he was scared of regret. He stepped around the corner, and there stood a silhouette. Not threatening, not rushing him, just standing there, waiting. When Vaughn got close enough, the person stepped into the light, and Vaughn froze. It wasn't who he expected. It wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a rival. It was someone he once called family. The shock on Vaughn's face said everything. "You," he whispered. His voice cracked slightly. The person took a slow breath. "You made it," they said. Vaughn shook his head. "Why you moving like this? What I do to you?" The answer came cold, almost emotionless. "You outgrew your position. You forgot who helped you. You forgot loyalty." Vaughn laughed in disbelief. "Loyalty? I showed nothing but love." The person stepped closer. "Love don't matter when ego involved." Vaughn backed up slightly. "So what you want?" They shrugged. A reminder. What happened next wasn't a fight. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't chaos. It was a conversation that turned into a warning that turned into fear, and fear that turned into a moment Vaughn didn't walk away from. The details have been twisted online, changed in rumors, exaggerated in street stories, but one thing became clear. Vaughn never saw the final betrayal coming from the person he trusted the most. Later that night, Dre got a call saying Vaughn never made it home. Mello checked his location and saw it stuck in one place for hours. His sister kept pacing the living room, praying he'd walk through the door. But all they found was his car. Vaughn was gone. The messages he left behind were the only clues. Messages nobody took seriously until it was too late. And the people who should have protected him ended up being the ones he needed protection from. His final warning wasn't for himself. It was for everyone he left behind. And that's where this story ends for him, but not for the people trying to make sense of it. So now you've seen the full picture, or at least the pieces Vaughn left behind. The late-night messages. The warnings nobody took seriously. The strange calls, the unknown numbers, the friends turned ghosts, the enemies pretending to be supporters. And the quiet fear he carried in his final days that only makes sense now that the truth is out. But the real question now is, what happens next? Vaughn may be gone in this fictional story, but the mysteries he left behind are still echoing. People close to him are still searching through old conversations, still replaying the last voice notes he recorded, still questioning who betrayed him and why. And you, sitting right here watching this, you're part of that search now. Because stories like this don't end clean. They don't fade quietly. They leave cracks in the people who lived through them and questions in the people trying to understand them. So tell us in the comments, who do you think was behind the final betrayal? Do you believe Vaughn knew exactly what was coming? Or was he blindsided by someone he trusted too much? Hit that like button if this story pulled you in. Subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive breakdown. And turn on notifications because this isn't the last time we uncover the hidden stories behind the biggest names in the culture. Stay alert, stay questioning, and stay locked in, because more stories like this are on the way.